Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome councillors and staff to tonight's council meeting, and I'd like to welcome those who are following on at home. So my name's Andrew Mason. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Corangamite Shire, and it's my duty to open the council meeting until we have elected a mayor. So to start off, I'd like to do the prayer. We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us, who serve as leaders, to remember that all of our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and environment of the Corangamite Shire. Amen. The acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all elders and peoples past and present. There have been no declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting, and there are obviously no apologies. I'd just like to introduce councillors. On our left here we have Councillor Jamie Vogels, Councillor Joe Beard, Councillor Geraldine Canady, Councillor Ruth Gastrain, Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Laurie Hickey, Councillor Nick Cole, and our Senior Staff Director of Corporate and Community Services, David Harrington, our Director of Works and Services, Brooke Love, over this side. And our Director of Sustainable Development, Justine Linley, and our Manager of Planning and Building Services, Aaron Moyne. So councillors, you've all been furnished with a copy of the council minutes from the 25th of October. Can I have a councillor move those? Councillor Vogels, a seconder, Councillor Macon, all in favour? Carried. So we'll now turn to the important business of electing a mayor and deputy mayor. But before we do that, councillors need to determine the term of office. So under the Local Government Act, the term of office needs to be determined before you elect a mayor. And the two options are a 1-year term or a 2-year term. There's a recommendation before you on the paper. We just need someone to move that motion by insert a kind of a 1 year or 2 years into that motion. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Beard, did you want to?
I'll talk now. Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. CEO, I'm happy to move the recommendation that we have a mayoral term for the period of 1 year, which has historically worked well in the past and I think would be comfortable going forward.
Thank you. Anyone to second that? Councillor Councillor Cole. Did you want to speak to that motion, Councillor Beard?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No,
Pretty straightforward.
happy.
All right. So all in favour? Carried. So now, in relation to the election of the mayor, the process is outlined in the papers, and the recommendation is effectively that you elect a mayor. That needs to be through a nomination and a seconder. So I'll ask councillors are there any nominations for the election for the position of mayor? Councillor Beard.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Ruth Gastrain for mayor position, please.
You accept, Councillor Gastrain?
Yes, I do, Mr. CEO.
Do I have a seconder for that nomination? Councillor Hickey. Are there any further nominations for the position of mayor? No. That being done, I will declare that the mayor is duly elected. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mason, for starting the meeting, and can I please thank councillors for electing me to this position. It's a position that I am incredibly privileged to hold, and I feel very humbled by your trust in me carrying out this role for a further 12 months. It's certainly going to be a busy year ahead, as we've seen the significant capital works projects that need to be delivered, the valued services that support our communities that our staff need to continue in delivering. We're looking at completing, hopefully fingers crossed, the Timboon to Port Campbell rail trail and continued work in the Port Campbell streetscape. And interesting, this afternoon, Council were briefed on preparedness for the coming few months on emergency management, and we're talking about floods and we're talking about fires. It seems quite incredible that at this time of the year that we're still talking about flooding. There'll be a great deal of advocacy to still continue, obviously, with the new government in Canberra, and after Saturday, a new government in Spring Street in Victoria. So we'll be advocating very strongly about our road network, particularly our state road network, looking for funding for the dairy supply chain, which we know how important that is for our agricultural sector. Advocating for improvements to NBN and mobile black spots, and we have had some success in the last few years, particularly around Eklund, Scotts Creek and Noorat, so we'll continue that, as well as the Camperdown Production Precinct, which is a major project north of Camperdown that we're seeking around $30 million to develop that industrial site. We have a great team at Corangamite, and I've said before, we bring a range of diverse interests to the tables, but there's always lively discussion, but it's always done with the utmost respect. So I'm certainly looking forward to working with my fellow councillors, with Mr Mason, senior officers team, and the very dedicated staff that we have here at Corangamite Shire. Thank you. Councillors, we move to election. Item 6.3, election of deputy mayor. Mr Mason.
Through you, Mayor, the process is pretty much the same as the election of the Mayor. You'll need to have call for nominations and second it.
Thank you. Councillors, is there anyone prepared to do some nomination for Deputy Mayor? Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Councillor Geraldine Kennedy for the role of a Deputy Mayor for 12 months.
Thank you. Do you accept that, Councillor Kennedy?
I do, Mayor Castro.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that nomination, please? Councillor Macon. Thank you. Councillors, is there any further nominations? If not, I'll put to a vote. All in favour? That's carried. Congratulations, Councillor Kennedy. Moving on to deputations and presentations this evening, we have one deputation which relates to agenda item 9.1, which is planning permit application P 2022-097, construction of residential aged care facility, demolition of buildings and variation to easement at 9 to 21 Robinson Street, Camperdown. And I ask Ms. Barbara Grunewald if she'd like to go to the lectern. Thank you, Ms. Grunewald.
Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you, Ruth, on becoming mayor.
Thank you.
I don't know if there may be a conflict of interest because another neighbour that lives in the street is currently sitting in the room and is on the council. So I don't know if that warrants a conflict of interest.
Can I clarify? So no, there's no conflict of interest because that officer is not involved in making the decision or assessing the application.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. Sometimes I think that when people speak, does anyone really listen? And then I realise people listen, but do they really hear what you say? In order to hear someone, you have to give yourself and your beliefs and your programming up and basically put yourself in their shoes. So may I ask that I try to get you to understand my family's position and the extended families in our surrounding area. Would you all mind closing your eyes? I understand if you don't want to. I understand that it takes a great deal of trust. Imagine if you have your eyes closed. You are a child, and for the purpose, imagine you are a child that lives in York Street, Camperdown. You've gone to school, had to deal with school all day, been bullied, come home, feel a little unworthy, a little untrusting, and a lot of unloved. Imagine feeling that bad every day that you come home to where you find your sanctuary, your safe space. And imagine falling asleep and all of a sudden you hear car doors, people talking, cars driving off, trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning, the sound of forklifts and metal scraping on metal. If you haven't got your eyes open, you can open them now. Imagine having a light shine in your room that is so bright you put 2 block-out blinds on your windows. Imagine asking the person responsible to please turn their light into their property and being ignored. Imagine another neighbour, who happens to be a man, ask for the same light to be turned into that person's property so it doesn't affect their sleep, and that light only being turned so much that it doesn't affect his property but still affects yours. Then only upon speaking to a higher authority, the light immediately be forced into their property, no longer affecting your sleep. What a fantastic, which is fantastic, and it proves that there is room for progress and change, and that people can live in harmony together. So now looking at the current plans you have to ask, what has this got to do with it? It shows there is room for change. I have asked why the driveway has to be directly opposite my home and my neighbour's home. The other neighbour has sold her property and will be moving, so this won't affect her. She is also in charge of this plan. Opportunity has been taken. The response being, it's the plan, it's getting done like that, and it's the plan. They can't be changed. So I've asked, what's the purpose of the driveway being there? And the response, it's the plan. On speaking with Aaron, your planning manager, I don't know if that's your correct role, yesterday, was informed that the plans were going to be approved, with the added change of planning to allow 8 more car spaces to be placed off York Street. So this in itself demonstrates there is room to move in these plans. So now it is choice. So why do you choose to leave the driveway where it is? It would be unreasonable to interpret persons' lives more in the surrounding area. If the planner chooses that they can make changes, they also have the power to make changes that do not negatively impact the surrounding neighbours or increase anxiety, sleep deprivation, noise and light pollution than what already occurs. Can I also make a side note that the traffic report only reflects the elderly in the nursing home and not the residents of the neighbourhood. There is a remedy which will make little ongoing impact to the surrounding residents. I would also like to table the studies of sleep deprivation from the Better Health Organisation, the Victorian University Melbourne's report, Vic Health, and a study associated with the limbic network connectivity in adolescence. I would also like to table the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission, pages of section 17 of which I will read. The Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act of 2006, Part 17.1 states, families are the fundamental group unit of society and are entitled to be protected by society and the state. Part 2, every child has the right, without discrimination, to such protection as in his or her best interests and is needed by him or her by reason of being a child. I would also like to table my original letter of objection. I would also like to table one of the remedies. I would also like to state that I have health problems, and now upon reading these studies, wonder if my health problems are from sleep deprivation. In conclusion, I have explained my position. I do have 2 remedies, one of which is tabled that will allow no further impact to the other residents of the street or myself, my children or the neighbours, that would limit noise and light pollution on the other residents in the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Grinfeld. Councillors, we'll move on to committee reports, and 8.1 is the councillor appointment to committees 2023. Mr Mason.
Through you, Mayor, as councillors would be aware, council has a number of committees which form a number of different functions. Some of these are statutory functions, some of them are advisory functions. They're all important as a way of distributing some of the workload of council between councillors and ensuring that there is knowledge and information sharing between committees and council. As councillors would be aware, we have discussed this matter at a briefing, and the recommendation before you reflects those conversations about what committees councillors are interested in being on or are keen to be on, and the recommendation is that you elect the designated councillors to the committees as outlined in the table. So the recommendation is there.
Thank you, Mr Mason. Councillors, is recommendation to elect the designated councillors that have been identified to those various committees. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Cole, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They're all outlined, the nominations. There's a good spread across a lot of different things, different committees and groups. Councillors are taking on across the line, so it seems to have most things covered with everyone sharing the load, basically. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think this is probably these committees, these community committees, are probably the one way that we can really get some traction with the workings of the greater community. I'm delighted to put my hand up to be involved with some of these committees, as I've no doubt the other councillors are. So I have no hesitation in recommending the adoption of these representatives.
Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, is there anything further? I'll put it to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Moving now to planning reports. Item 9.1, planning permit application P 2022-097, the construction of residential aged care facility, demolition of buildings and variation to easement at number 9 to 21 Robinson Street, Camperdown. Mr Moyne, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you I present Council with this report for planning permit application PP 2022-097. The application seeks planning approval for the construction of a residential aged care facility, demolition of removal of buildings and variation of a drainage easement associated with Southwest Healthcare's Camperdown Hospital campus. The proposal seeks to construct a new residential aged care facility next to the existing Camperdown Hospital to replace the existing facility on York Street known as Marinda Lodge, to be demolished on completion of the development and relocation of residents. Funding of the project of approximately $39 million was announced in May this year to build the 36-bed aged care facility in Camperdown to be operated by Southwest Healthcare. The project is part of the Rural and Regional Public Sector Residential Aged Care Revitalisation Strategy, aimed to replace and upgrade public facilities to better meet community needs and contemporary standards. A description of the proposal is provided within the planning report and includes development of a new residential aged care facility, demolition, access and car parking, landscaping and fencing, signage and the drainage easement variation. The development and facility will be reoriented to front Robinson Street, incorporating main user entry and access, with service vehicle access, staff car parking and back of house entry from York Street, incorporating 10 proposed on-site car parking spaces. An additional 8 spaces have been proposed by the applicant in response to car parking issues following Council's on-site planning inspection. The Camperdown Hospital is currently located within a public use zone which provides strategic support for the continued use and ongoing operation of the hospital. The proposed development expands into land within the general residential zone, which requires planning approval. A heritage overlay also applies to the hospital site. Public notice of the application has been given and Council has received 2 objections which raise issues associated with traffic impacts, car parking and construction management. These matters have been considered and addressed within the planning assessment. The planning assessment of the proposal concludes that the development of a new residential aged care facility is supported through strategic and policy direction in the planning scheme. The proposal will provide a high standard of aged care accommodation for ageing residents in the Shire and has been designed to improve and respect the amenity of residents and those within the surrounding area. The development will have a lasting positive social benefit in Camperdown as a core community health facility. The recommendation is provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, there's a recommendation. Someone like to move the recommendation, make a comment, ask a question? Councillor Kennedy. Do you want to move the recommendation?
I do.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This residential aged care facility is providing a really essential need to a sector of our community that deserves modern, purpose-built facilities so they can receive the best of aged care. I think that's an element that we really need to consider very highly in this decision. It's really, really fantastic for all our communities that, you know, we have the opportunity for a 36-bed facility to replace Marinda Lodge, which is well past its use-by date. I think an important thing to keep in mind is that it is in a public use zone, and that's been the case for as long as I can remember. So the project will not change the general character of the neighbourhood, and nor will some of the alterations that are proposed in the plan. But it will give us a very high standard new facility for the elderly in our community that really need such a facility. The objectives were mainly concerned with the parking and access to the facility. So the applicants have responded by creating an additional 8 parking spaces on the site. I understand that the parking on York Street will not change in terms of the number of parks that are available, not change very much. There might be a couple less spaces maybe, but the expectation is that most visitor parking will move across to Robinson Street, and there would be higher utilisation of the existing car park that exists on that side, off the Robinson Street. The main change in York Street is the service vehicle entry, which has been reduced from 3 entry points into 1 to accommodate all the service vehicle movements, and that it also will provide the parking spaces for the staff. It's probably, you can't sort of manage every last thing, you know, when it comes to a public use zone. I can't imagine that there would be any extra activity or noise in the area, and I think the plans have gone to, you know, some extent to get the best outcome, you know, with the kind of services and activity that would occur in that kind of a building, like in a public aged care facility. I think that the permit conditions adequately address the concerns that have been raised, but I just can't move away from the fact that it is a public use zone and that it's not going to be greatly altered by these changed plans or the alteration of the ingress into the building off York Street. So I believe that we should support the recommendation that's before us.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do thank Barbara for making that presentation. I listened very intently before I decided to second this motion. What we will have developed here will be a home for 38 residents on a high care basis, far better than what we've got up there at the moment. The very fact that the residents and also the patients in the nearby hospital will be deserving of their sleep will mean that traffic movements and noise will be contained to a minimum where possible, and I'm not convinced that the extra beddings will create a significant increase in the amount of noise and light spill that comes from this facility. And so I think the good sort of overweighs the potential to be intrusive, and I think the very fact that we can provide 38 residential homes or residential rooms for aged care is an obligation of this Shire. So I speak in favour of supporting the Planning Officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, is there anything further? Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, is it okay if you indulge me with allowing to ask a question without notice before I make my
Yes,
statement,
you can.
please?
Yeah.
So just to Mr Moyne, please, and I'm sorry, again, question without notice. Just in regards to traffic impacts, and because of the public use zone that it's got, is there, as of right, is that right, that there's an as of right in this zone that we can't change or alter in terms of service access? So does that just pretty much eliminate that part of it?
Thank you,
Does that
Councillor
make sense?
Beard. It does. Thank you, Councillor Beard. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the public use zone supports the ongoing use of the hospital itself and doesn't require a planning permit for any use or development associated with the hospital, and that includes relocation and consolidation of the service vehicle access. So the only trigger for the planning permit in that part of the site is the heritage overlay, so that limits council's consideration to heritage impacts as a result of that change itself. So the change in access in that area under the public use zone is beyond council's scope of consideration, and that includes the existing conditions and traffic movements and car parking around the hospital itself.
Thank you, Councillor Beard.
Yeah, no, that
Comment?
certainly, yeah, because that was part of my question, was around how can it be controlled in any way with the new change to the service area, but that's covered that, thank you. Yeah, so I'll certainly be supporting this application as well. I mean, for many, many years this project's been mooted at every level, I think, in the community, and how much it's been needed. And I certainly appreciate and respectfully thank Barbara for obviously her deputation and the paperwork she's provided us with. And I guess all we can do is make the best out of the situation, and hopefully the conditions that have been placed in the recommendation, particularly I think around the construction period. So by having a construction management plan added as a condition, I think is a really good move, and I think that will certainly help. Being in a residential area, I think that will help control not only noise but the hours of construction, the wastewater, stormwater management, and more importantly public safety. And I think we've all noted that traffic has been is contentious, and is certainly an issue, so I'll be certainly glad to see that the construction management plan has been included as a condition. It's no doubt that Maroondah Lodge, as it currently sits, it's an amazing facility, and the care, you can't speak highly enough of the care that the service providers to give those incredible ageing residents of our community, but they do deserve better. And this has been a project that, as I said, has been on the cards for a long time, and it's great that there was announcement to fund it. So I think it's a project that certainly going forward will be an incredible asset to not only Camperdown but the broader region of Corangamite Shire. And I think if we can have any influence around that is carried out. The actual facility itself, I think we're pretty well all on the same page there, but if we can encourage particularly staff and visitors to park in the appropriate car parking spaces and leave the residential areas to the residents, then I guess that's all we can do is be mindful to keep reminding people there wherever we can. And we did that at the on-site inspection. We spoke to the applicants and raised that as an issue that we'd like to see that going forward. And obviously that has been identified. But yeah, I can't wait for this project to get underway, and I do hope that it can be managed in the appropriate manner going forward for everyone's sake.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, is there any further questions, comments, anything further to say? Like you, Councillor Beard, I'd certainly encourage South West Healthcare to be good neighbours and to be very mindful that this facility does sit adjacent to a residential area, and to really try and work their operations around reasonable hours. Councillors, I'll put this to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Moving on to officers' reports, item 10.1 is the grants policy. Mrs Linley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report recommends that Council revokes the current grants policy and replaces it with a revised grants policy. The aim of the policy is to provide a framework to guide the provision of consistent administration across Council's various grant programs, and the framework is supported by a series of detailed processes consistent with the Council's strategic direction in seeking to support a thriving community, and it applies to the following programs: community grants, facility design grants, environmental support grants, events and festivals, business facade improvement, small business assistance, enabling grants program, the leverage grants program associated with the Berrybank Wind Farm grants, and the project grants program also associated with the Berrybank Wind Farm grants. The policy doesn't apply to funding that is provided to the community through other means, such as budget allocations or funding provided to halls and recreation reserves, funding provided to facility management and council discretionary funding allocations, and funding provided through the community planning program. The policy also doesn't apply to the quick response grants program, which is the subject of a separate council policy. As reviewed, this policy ensures that Council is compliant with recommendations made by the Victorian Auditor General in 2022 as part of the review into fraud control over local government grants. The revised policy will allow Council to continue to provide grants to the community, ensuring that obligations around transparency and financial accountability are met. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs Linley. Councillors, there's a recommendation to revoke the existing grants policy and adopt a reviewed policy. So I'd like to move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Is anyone prepared to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey.
Well, there's not very much to say to this. It's purely updating the existing policy. So, yes, I'm happy to move that this be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, as Councillor Hickey said, it's updating the program, but I will note that a lot of these grants and things are big bickies to small communities and do a lot of good. Some, especially the Berrybank Wind Farm grants up north, is going to be quite a deal of money coming through over the few years coming on. So it does make a big difference if it's used properly and spent well. It can make a big difference to a community. So, thank you.
Certainly can. Councillors, any further comments? All in favour? Carried. Item 10.2 is High Street Lismore Footpath Special Charge Scheme. Ms Love, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, councillors, this report seeks to finalise the costs associated with the special charge scheme, which was declared by Council on the 21st of December 2021 for the purposes of defraying expenses associated with the installation of a footpath on the northern side of High Street in Lismore from Brown Street to the Golf Club. The final costs are less than those estimated at the time of the declaration, and approval is now sought from Council to vary the cost of the special charge scheme and to serve notice to those benefiting property owners seeking their contribution. The recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, recommendation is there on page 396. Someone like to move it?
Oh,
Councillor Cole, seconded by Councillor Beard. Thank you, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think everyone likes a bonus when it's in the right direction, and it's small bickies, but it all helps. It will make a decent footpath up to the golf club, which is being used quite a bit with the cafe that's in there now, and especially this year being a bit wet underfoot will make it a lot easier to get there and get back again. So, and they get a bit more, don't have to pay quite as much.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillor Beard.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mayor. I it's great when we actually see these special charge schemes actually declared. We actually get to tick them off. It goes through a budget process. Then we, have community engagement and we get everybody together, and then we can actually decide that, yep, the project's going to go ahead. What's even better is when the project's done and then we can see that it's been done within budget, and then, we can actually go back to our residents and say that you'll actually not be paying as much as what we first thought. So it's pretty consistent that the team with Mr. Kelly and his team, I'm yet to see them ever come back asking with them going over. I see Miss Love having a bit of a panic over here, but no, we're very grateful that they do go into fine detail when they're quoting these, and I'm sure the community are very appreciative that they will get to see a little bit of, well, not as much having to be paid for, but footpaths are pretty special, as we know, and even better when we can do them within budget.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Any further comment, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 10.3 is a special charge scheme for road upgrade in Neil Avenue, Terang. Thank you, Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, councillors, this report proposes that a special charge scheme be declared for the upgrade of the existing gravel road on Neil Avenue in Terang to a sealed road and associated works. Consultation has been undertaken earlier this year with the residents of Neil Avenue. Preliminary letter was sent to affected property owners to gauge their initial support for the proposal. This was followed by an on-site meeting between property owners, councillors, council officers, to give owners the opportunity to discuss the proposal and ask any questions. At that meeting, the majority of the owners agreed to proceed with the project to the next stage, subject to a budget allocation in this year's council's budget. Last month, a statutory public notice was placed in the local newspaper and a letter sent to the benefiting property owners regarding the proposed declaration of the special charge scheme. A further 28-day period was provided for residents to make a written submission. This period expired on the 17th of November and there have been no submissions received. As there has been majority support from the property owners to the project, and this project has been endorsed by Council as a part of the 22-23 budget, it's now recommended that Council resolve to declare a special charge scheme to finance the upgrade of the existing gravel road in Neil Avenue to a sealed road. Recommendations before you.
Thank you, Ms Love, and I know that the benefiting adjoining property owners will be pleased that this project's going ahead. It's been they've been advocating for a long time. Someone like to move this recommendation, please? Councillor Canady. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey, thank you. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I would say this is probably going to be one of those special charge schemes that couldn't be more welcomed by the property owners. They're an incredibly enthusiastic group of people and they absolutely love their street. They're really keen to see this upgrade. They've got some drainage, dust and access improvements that need attention. And there's actually, surprisingly, even though it is a no-through road, it does have a lot of traffic movements on it. One and Water have a facility at the end of it, and I'm told that they're up and down the Neil Avenue many times a day, so it's quite surprising. And in addition to that, local community use Neil Avenue as an access point. It sort of has formed part of a default sort of walking circuit that the locals use. So, it's providing a community benefit in addition to the special benefits that that the property owners will receive through this special charge scheme. So I certainly support the recommendation before us, and I know they will too.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Mayor. The beneficiaries of this 485 metres of ceiling will be the residents who front the road, and without the special charges scheme, this project may not necessarily go ahead. As most people would be very aware that the road funding is very much a pressure budget item, and the budget only goes so far. It's only stretched to what we can actually contribute in a year. So the special charges scheme actually assists in that budget going further, and for the people who are benefiting from it, it just seems fair that they make a contribution, and I think the whole community will be very grateful of the charges scheme, and certainly watch with interest with the road when it's sealed and looking pristine.
Terrific. Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Any further comments, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.4 is contract 2023-016, renovations to McNichol Street Long Day Care Centre here in Camperdown. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to award the contract for the renovations to the McNichol Street Long Day Care Centre in Camperdown. The existing McNichol Street Long Day Care Centre building is owned and managed by council and has been identified as in need of urgent repair. The facility has a waiting list of nearly 50 children, and the current house style layout means that the number of children is capped at 12. The upgrading of these facilities will create additional space and functionality and enable a new licensed capacity of 20 children, which will assist in meeting current childcare standards and allowing the centre to be fully licensed to allocate those children. Tenders have been sought from suitably experienced and qualified contractors as a lump sum contract. One submission was received. This submission was assessed by the evaluation panel and considered to demonstrate capacity and capability to deliver based on previous projects, as well as reference checks that indicated the client had proven to be competent in meeting timelines, completing works to a high standard, communicating well with superintendents, and being willing to use local sub-trades. And in this case, our local content was noted through the submission as engaging local suppliers for materials. The submission is over Council's allocated budget of $400,000. There's a variance of approximately $77,500 between the tender price and Council's budget. There's also likely to be other costs associated with the building construction, such as asbestos removal, energy rating and surveying, at an estimated cost of $30,000, leaving a shortfall of approximately $100,000 for this project. It was felt in relation to the contract that whilst there was only one tender received, one submission received, that Prospect Building and Construction are capable of undertaking the works, and the outcome to renovate McNichol Street building will deliver good community benefit. As such, the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, someone prepared to move that recommendation? Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon.
That's right.
Sorry.
You can do it.
Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Ms Love, for that report. I feel like we've just done the circle of life tonight. We've gone from the aged care facility now to the youth for the children's long day care. So it's really nice that we are catering to all of our community's needs. This is a significant upgrade, and as Ms Love alluded to, that the current building doesn't have the capacity for the demand. So it's our obligation to have to deal with that. We know full well what childcare means to all of our working families these days, and so it is something that we do need to take into account. I think it's disappointing that there is such a budget variance, but I think we can pick that up and cover that through the mid-year budget review, as the report stipulates. It's not uncommon. I think we've been saying this probably at least the last 6 months, and we'll be saying it probably for at least the next 6 months, that we're going to have costs coming back from what we originally budgeted for to what the quotes are coming back in as, and we can't let that deter us from getting projects achieved, because it is for our community. We've got some really incredible accountants who help us here with balancing our books, so I'm sure no doubt come mid-year budget we'll be able to accommodate that. It is, however, important that we do keep going on with these projects and not let inflation deter us, but knowing full well that obviously there's contingencies in that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the final costings come out. But this is a really critical project that we need to get done for the kids, so looking forward to it.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Beard nearly summed it all up for me. So the facility does have a waiting list of 50 children, and we need to do everything possible to make sure that the more children can get some daycare, because as we all know, us mums and dads like to get back to work, and if having daycare is number one priority. So by doing this renewal, we will create an extra spaces for another 20 children, which is really great. So that means we can all get back to work. And I also do note that it's going over budget, but as we've said before, the higher cost can go down to materials and labour, and just the general cost of inflation at the moment. So more than happy to increase the budget on this one and award the contract to Prospect Building and Construction, as they have they're an experienced contractor and have a good reputation out there in the industry. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really think we just can't overstate the community benefit of this project. I have a number of grandchildren, and I just see my daughters-in-law desperately trying to find places for childcare. So it's just a must-have facility, and we're here to look after our community. So it's really, well, I suppose you'd say it's a no-brainer, really, to some extent. And to have an increased capacity when there's just such demand, well, it's pretty great to be able to deliver something like that to our community. And really in our current environment, it is actually disappointing that it is above our budgeted costs, but I think it's well and truly warranted to proceed with it. Because of the community benefit. Look, the costs are going to keep rising. It's not going to get any cheaper in the short term, and the difficulty in securing contractors is creating real difficulty in proceeding with all kinds of projects. So I think even though we only had one applicant, we got one. So just grab it and run. And because I think that the benefits that are going to come back through proceeding with this project will well and truly make up for that extra expenditure. Not forgetting either that we do actually have a fallback position in our budget. Our finance staff that Councillor Beard mentioned very cleverly built in a buffer into our budget to, looking ahead, knowing that we were going to be having to deal with increased expenditure. So, we do have that to fall back upon as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillors, anything further? All those in favour? That's carried. Item 10.5 is report on the National Local Roads and Transport Congress 2022. Thank you, Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, yes, this report is to provide an overview of the content of the 2022 Local Government National Local Roads Congress, which was held earlier this month in Hobart, Tasmania, and attracted works managers and professionals, councillors from across Australia, or those who could attend who weren't dealing with floods. Some attended and still had to leave early. But this year's event focused on how local government can help address transport productivity challenges and road safety issues on our roads, while also building sustainable and resilient infrastructure. A number of sessions were held across the 2 days, and certainly provided good interest and content and number of reflections on how council can consider those issues. What was of particular benefit was opportunity to network with others, and in particular opportunity to advocate on behalf of our communities and councillors. We were able to have a discussion about the LRCI program and continuation of funding for other public land projects where council has a significant amount of Crown-owned land assets, and this clause in the funding enables construction and maintenance and improvements to facilities on Crown land. as well as to discuss the challenges with the disaster recovery funding, whereby in Victoria day labour has not yet been adopted and remains ineligible for funding. So as such, council must use construction contractors to complete all of the works and to fix all of the roads that are currently damaged. We need to get approval and use contractors to be able to do that work. So at the moment, there's obviously a bit of a perfect storm with the availability of contractors after COVID and with the amount of work that's on. So we're certainly trying to advocate for day labour to be considered as an eligible expense so that we can use our workers who know our roads to complete those roadworks. And finally, certainly valuable knowledge was gained from discussions around future challenges and opportunities, and we were able to hear from various politicians around current policy set and future policy settings. And the report and information on each of the sessions has been provided before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. It's an information-only item. Councillor Macon, you attended
Yes, I did.
the Road Congress with myself and Ms Love. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure, thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, thank you, Miss Love, for that report as well. It was great to be able to meet and form connections with other councillors and management staff from other councils around the country. It was also interesting to note the majority of councils are facing the same problems as us. We heard from Assistant Minister of Infrastructure and Transport, the Honourable Carol Brown. She set out some road safety objectives and road trauma reduction targets, which included reducing fatalities by 50% and serious injuries by 30% by 2030. Longer term, 0 deaths, injuries by 2050. And it was an interesting stat that 1,200 people are killed or 40,000 people are seriously injured on our roads each year, which is quite an alarming stat. And road trauma costs the economy $27 billion per year. But one of the things that stood out to me also is that 67% of these occurred on rural and regional roads. So it just shows how important our rural and regional roads are, and we need to have funding to get these roads built and maintained to a better standard than what they are now if we want to decrease this rate. We learned of using recycled materials in roads and other infrastructure such as glass and end-of-life tyres. We heard from the Brimbank Council how their trial with this material is going, which was interesting and something to keep an eye on. We also noted that the average project size was 430 million 5 years ago, but now it's at 1.1 billion today. So it just shows how much everything's increased in cost. We heard about the future of EVs and that internal combustion engines are to be phased out by 2025. But if we are to go down the EV path, we need the infrastructure in place, and to support this we need more investment in this field. But overall, I had a great couple of days networking and forming connections. I would like to thank my fellow councillor Mayor Strain and Manager Miss Love for taking me and looking out for me while I was there. It was a great experience, and I would highly recommend my fellow councillors to go if they ever get the opportunity. It was a very good experience, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Macon, and you were no trouble at all. It certainly was a good congress, and as you've heard, there were so many topics and variety of interests, and I just would like to mention about the Congress, because it was through this Congress that Roads to Recovery was developed back in 2002. So as a council, Corangamite Shire and all councils right across Australia have done incredibly well out of the Roads to Recovery funding, which is untied federal funding that comes to us for work on our local roads. And I certainly agree with you, Ms Love, the issue around day labour in Victoria on repairing roads that have been affected by the floods is just so frustrating when, as you say, our workers know our roads better than anybody else, and how disappointing it is that we can't use them. It's certainly, people out there driving their cars on roads that are covered in potholes, they don't care whose road it is. Is it a council road? Is it a a state road, and just reading social media, you know, people just want the roads fixed, and the sooner it can happen, the better, rather than waiting for, you know, contractors to become available. So, as I said, that was just information only, councillors. Is there any questions any councillors have for Ms Love on that report? No? Thank you. We'll move on to item 10.6, quick response grants for November. Councillor Vogels, I believe you have a conflict of interest. Thank you. Mrs Lindley, can you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Quick Response Grants program has a fixed budget that Council provides annually for the distribution of funds to Shire community groups. The program has a rolling intake, and this flexible approach allows Council to allocate small amounts of money to various community groups, resulting in positive outcomes for the community. For the month of November, one application was received from the Camperdown Cycling Club Incorporated for $500 towards the purchase of 2 first aid kits. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs Lindley. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. The Quick Response Grant program provides financial assistance to the community to undertake beneficial projects and activities, and it's a great way for groups to be able to access money quickly. I noticed that there's just under half the allocation been used, so there's still $9,855 there that I would encourage the community to have a look at. And is it right? I'm correct? Yep.
Yes.
So have a look at it and just see if that can be of benefit to their group. I congratulate the Camperdown Cycling Club on their application and the funding for $500 that goes towards the purchase of 2 first aid kits, and I pray that they never need to use them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, but I have nothing further to add, so thank you.
Councillor Beard.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, and yeah, this is a great application. It's just nice. It's quite nice to think that there's community groups out there that you know, short of a few $100, $500 here or there, and I actually think we'll go to the Corangamite Shire Quick Response Grants as an opportunity to gain funding. So it's great to see a project like this. I mean, first aid kits. I mean, every time we have this at month to month, it's all, you don't know what's going to appear. But it's great that this money can go towards those small projects. I just wanted to put a bit of a shout out reminder because I know there's a community group locally where I'm from that might be expecting their application to go up tonight, but our officers actually, when they get the report or their application, it can take a bit of time to go through the report for it to get to us at the agenda at the council table. So people may not actually see their application go up the same month that they put their application in. So if that makes sense, it's just we want people to be patient, or just even ask us, all the officers, around a bit of guidance on that. But it can take sometimes the whole month before the application gets to us. So just want people to remember to be patient.
Yeah. And that's the fact, is that the agenda papers are basically prepared a fortnight out from a council meeting. So if you come in after that, it's that cut off, then it will go to the next meeting, I'm sure. Okay. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, excuse me, councillors, is there anyone want to raise any other business at tonight's meeting? Right. We don't have anyone joining us in the gallery for open forum. Has there been anything coming on?
No, Mayor, there's
Social
been
media?
nothing.
No? Okay, well, in that case, councillors, I will close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you to those who may be watching at home. Good evening.